The Road to Independence, Africa's Long Journey to Freedom, a continent in chains. Before the ships came, before the flags were raised, before the borders were drawn, there was Africa, a land not lost, not primitive, but alive, home to mighty empires, great cities, rich cultures, and spiritual depth. For centuries, Africans lived by their own rhythms, trading across deserts, farming the Nile, forging steel in West Africa, and building societies on their own terms. But that world was about to change. In 1884, in a room in Berlin, the fate of an entire continent was rewritten. Visual, the Berlin Conference, 1884. European leaders around a table, a map of Africa laid before them. No African voice was heard. No African leader was invited. If you're ready to see Africa's story the way it's meant to be told, raw, powerful, and unapologetically true, then make sure you like this video, share it, and subscribe to the New World Playbook. Because the past was written in their ink, but the future, we write that ourselves. The scramble for Africa. In the late 19th century, European powers raced to carve up Africa in a mad dash for land, resources, and control. Britain, France, Belgium, Germany, Portugal, and others each took their share, ignoring ethnic groups, languages, and ancient boundaries. Visual, animated maps showing European takeover from 1880 to 1914. They came with Bibles and rifles. They spoke of civilization, but they brought conquest. In Congo, under King Leopold II, millions perished for rubber. In Namibia, German forces wiped out entire populations. Africa was not silent. Resistance rose. The Zulu fought in the south. The Ashanti resisted in the west. The Herero and Nama stood their ground. But the guns of empire were loud, and the chains of colonization were heavy. Life under colonial rule. For decades, Africans lived under foreign domination. The colonizers built railways, not for people, but for profit. Schools were open, to serve empire, not to empower. Traditional leaders were displaced. Cultures were suppressed. Languages were replaced. Forced labor and taxation became the norm. Visual, footage of African porters, colonial classrooms, white administrators. But beneath the surface, something was stirring. From Dakar to Dar es Salaam, whispers of freedom grew louder. African thinkers began to dream of something more, of sovereignty, of unity, of liberation. The sparks of rebellion. Resistance never truly died. It changed forms. In the early 20th century, intellectuals like Edward Blyden, John Chilembwe, and Jomo Kenyatta began to question the colonial order, not just with weapons, but with words. Visual, black and white portraits, newspapers, African students at universities. In Nigeria, unions organized strikes. In Kenya, land grievances turned to protests. In South Africa, apartheid began to take root, and so did organized resistance. Across the continent, early nationalist movements took shape. The first political parties were born, small, cautious at first, but growing in power and ambition. The winds of change, World War II, changed everything. Africans had fought and died for European powers. They returned home asking, why should we fight for freedom abroad if we are denied it at home? Visual, African soldiers in Wabawatu returning to cities with war medals. Pan-Africanism rose. Leaders like Kwame Nkrumah and W.E.B. Du Bois called for unity beyond borders. The 1945 Pan-African Congress in Manchester declared a clear demand: independence, now. Visual, photos from the Manchester Congress, quotes from leaders. The winds of change swept through Africa. Protests became movements. Movements became uprisings. The colonial world began to tremble. The march to independence. It began with Ghana. In 1957, Ghana, under Kwame Nkrumah, became the first sub-Saharan African nation to gain independence from colonial rule. Visual, Nkrumah speaking in Accra, at long last the battle has ended. One by one the dominoes fell. Guinea in 1958, Nigeria and Congo in 1960, Tanzania and Algeria in 1962, Kenya in 1963, Angola and Mozambique in 1975, Zimbabwe in 1980, Namibia in 1990, South Africa in 1994. Each story was different, some through peaceful negotiation, others through bitter war. In Algeria, the struggle cost over 1 million lives. In Kenya, the Mau Mau uprising led to brutal crackdowns. In Angola and Mozambique, liberation came only after decades of armed resistance. The day after freedom, independence brought euphoria and challenges. New nations inherited borders drawn by colonizers. Ethnic tensions, economic dependency, and lack of infrastructure plagued progress. Some countries embraced democracy. Others fell into dictatorship, coups, or civil war. Visual, leaders taking office, followed by protests, economic struggles. The Cold War made things worse, as the US and USSR turned Africa into a proxy battleground. In Congo, Patrice Lumumba was assassinated months after taking office. In other regions, foreign interests fueled instability. Still, hope endured, education spread, women rose to power, African voices reached the United Nations. New leaders, movements, and generations carried the torch. Legacy and lessons. Today, Africa is home to 1.5 billion people. It's a continent of rising economies, vibrant cultures, and young visionaries. But the past still echoes. Neo-colonialism, foreign debt, and corruption continue to challenge true freedom and equality. The road to independence was not just about breaking chains. It was about building new paths. And that road is still being paved. Visual, modern African cities, youth movements, tech innovations. Remembering the journey. Africa's story is not one of victimhood. It is one of resistance, of endurance, of dreams deferred and reclaimed. The road to independence was long. It was painful. It was heroic. Visual, montage of independence ceremonies, African flags rising, crowds cheering. To remember it is not enough. We must learn from it, and we must keep walking toward justice, unity, and dignity, because the fight for freedom is never truly over. Africa's road to independence was not straight. It twisted through blood and hope, through betrayal and triumph. But it's a road that still stretches forward, walked by generations rising with new dreams. So if this story moved you, if it made you think, question, or feel pride, drop a comment. What part of the journey inspired you most? Hit that like button. It helps us reach more people. Subscribe to the New World Playbook, where we uncover the past to shape the future. Because this isn't just content. This is the narrative we were never meant to tell. And now we tell it loud.